When I asked historian and professor of history at Princeton University, Kevin Kruse, to come on the show, he graciously said yes, and then asked if I wanted to talk about something in particular or just the general state of chaos. And I thought general chaos made more sense and also sounded like a name George Lucas would give a bad guy. Kevin is the author of many books and the co-editor of Myth America. Historians take on the biggest legends and lies about our past. He also has a super informative newsletter on ghosts called Campaign Trails. Kevin, thanks so much for being here.
Always a pleasure.
Let me start with a general chaos question. Is there an historical antecedent in America for what we're seeing in the first 100 days plus of Trump's second term?
No, I mean, it depends on how we like in terms of the level of activity and the importance of stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's a flurry of things that we haven't seen in this degree since FDR, who kind of set the stage for what a first 100 days should be. He's the whole reason we even bother to count this because he set this record of 15 major pieces of legislation sent to Congress, 15 major bills signed into law, transformed the entire economy, everything from public power and industrial and farming reforms to he got beer back on the streets. Like it was a huge deal of what FDR did. So Trump has done as much as FDR has. He's done it, however, in the other direction. It's completely tearing things down and destroying things. He's done it without getting anything passed by Congress at all. He's done it all by executive order and kind of a dictatorial whim. And so that's remarkable. He's done just as much bad in the opposite direction and in an underhanded way.
So, of all these things that he's done, this myriad of things that Trump has done, that Elon Musk has done with Trump's blessing, what strikes you as maybe the biggest deal as an historian?
I mean, the biggest deal is that they're doing this at all, right? That you've brought in this one of the richest men in the world to basically dismantle government in a way that I'm not a lawyer, but seems to be flouting at least the letter of the law. Certainly, the larger understandings that you can't, gut these programs without an act of Congress. That in and of itself, just that he's there, that they've got these 20 something kids who don't know what they're doing, unplugging machines and destroying programs that have done real good in the world is really remarkable. And I don't think we should, as we assess Trump and Musk, who is right there with him, we can't turn the page on the fact that just where we're at, that this guy is involved at all in this is really insane. There have been rich people involved in American politics before. We've had, the World War II was famous for so-called dollar a year men, corporate leaders who took roles in government kind of through self-sacrifice, not making money as the name implied. But Musk is something totally different. He's wrecking things for us and enriching himself. And it's totally off the rails.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is, just a startling sort of unmaking of government that we're seeing. And I would probably put alongside that, or maybe even above that, the sort of complete dismantling of due process, which
Yeah.
I think you could argue is sort of the foundation of our law.
Yeah. I mean, this is the irony. Trump has the Declaration of Independence in the Oval Office behind little stupid theater curtains, and he's very proud of it. He's clearly never read it, right?
Yeah.
The Declaration of Independence is all about the kind of things that he is blowing past here. He is denying fair trials. He is shipping people off to foreign nations to be held. All the things that we used to complain about George III, Trump is now doing right now, and it is remarkably dangerous. The weirdest part of this is this pushback, and we saw from Kash Patel just this morning in his testimony before the Senate. We saw it from Marco Rubio and other people of, oh, what are we supposed to do if we have to give everyone a due process? This is going to take forever. Yeah, that's the point. You shouldn't just be able to disappear millions of people on your word, right? That's why we have a rule of law, and it's important to follow it. And I'm sorry if it's going to slow down your effort to disappear 10 million people to some Latin American hellhole prison. But that's what this country is all about. And just because you want it just because they keep on saying President Trump really wants this. President Trump has always believed this. That's not a good reason. He's been stupid for a long time. That's not a good reason to do something.
Yeah, it's sort of this Silicon Valley ethos, the move fast and break shit.
Yeah.
But they're applying it to the Constitution and the rule of law.
Right, right. And it's every again, there is bloat, there's inefficiency,
Of
there
course.
are redundancies in government. Yeah, absolutely. But everything that's there, going back to the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence, is there for a reason, right? Somebody didn't just create, we don't have food safety inspectors for fun, right? There was a
Right.
period in which this was a major crisis in the country, right? We don't have all these kinds of safeguards in our legal system just for the hell of it. Pete Hegseth is ripping out, the logistics folks in the Pentagon. They're there for a reason. They help us win world wars. All this stuff is important, and we've got a set of people whose combination of unbridled ignorance and unbridled arrogance has put them in a really dangerous place where they are destroying things because they don't see the value in them. They don't assume that they have value. They refuse to listen to anyone who will tell them that these things are there for a reason, and are instead just destroying them. And the reckoning is coming on this. Well, we're already feeling it, but I think we're going to see some real serious problems come up in the near future. Hard to say where it'll be. Some pandemic with RFK Jr. in charge. God help us. National security crisis with Hegseth at the Pentagon. We've certainly Sean Duffy, former Real World cast member, now in charge of the Department of Transportation. As we've got planes crashing all the time. It's just going to be chaos. So buckle up.
Yeah. I was thinking, America has survived a civil war, among other things. But one of the things that resulted from the Civil War, and that I think you would say helped us move forward, were the Reconstruction amendments, which are now, of course, under attack by the Trump administration and seemingly the Supreme Court. Assuming we get out of this madness, which I think we will after a lot of pain for a lot of people, unfortunately, do we need something, do you think, on that scale to deal with this, to make sure it doesn't happen again? Or are we looking at, the system has failed, or are we looking and needs to be overhauled and added to with more safeguards? Or is this, sort of a, well, this was a one-off. The guardrails are actually fine.
No, I think the guardrails need to be reinforced. And so something definitely has to be done. In your question of do we basically amend the current system, or do we kind of rip it up and start anew? I'm of the school, and I might be persuaded later, but right now I'm of the school that would hold that another set of amendments would be what's needed, right? And so the kind of course correction we saw, not just after the Civil War, but think about during the 60s, a raft of new amendments passed, some big, some small. But it used to be more of a norm for us to do this. And during the 60s, we almost solved one of our problems today. We almost had a change to the Electoral College, which after George Wallace nearly stole the election, or nearly threw the election of 68 into a toss-up in the House. We almost had a moment there. Again, segregationists blocked it as they block everything good. But I think that if we have that kind of correction, I think we can make sure that the guardrails are there, but they've got to be formalized, right? And so the real problem that we've seen with Trump was that a lot of things that held up as norms or traditions were just kind of assumed. We
Yeah.
assumed, somebody wouldn't bend things to this degree, wouldn't abuse the pardon power, wouldn't be given such a long leash by the court too. And so I think, say, a constitutional amendment that spells out quite specifically the president and the vice president are bound by the law. They cannot profit in office. All the kind of things that Trump has violated. I think to spell them out quite clearly would go a long way to making sure this never happens again. Because as we've seen, it can under the current system.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about more about, Trump enriching himself and stuff like that. Talk about the grifting, the
Yeah.
grafting that we've been seeing from Trump himself, from his family, from his administration. They are basically making the Nixon administration seem like a boys' choir.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And look, have been incredibly critical of Richard Nixon. I think I've got a pretty good record on that.
Pretty
And yet, I'll
bold.
tell
That's
you,
bold, Kevin.
it's bold. I know he's a very popular target. But look, one of the things Nixon did, and this is why that famous "I'm not a crook" speech, that's because they came after him finally for enriching himself in office. And for Nixon, that was too far, right? And there's a question of whether or not he really did. He got a tax break on his vice presidential papers. That's what that whole thing was about. But Nixon knew that was really bad,
Yeah.
right? And that era, that was a sign of oh, that's the third. Like we can make all these excuses about executive privilege and national security, and we've got to do this and we've got to do that, and maybe Watergate might fly there. But if you're putting money in your pockets, that is a clear sign that you've crossed the line, right? To the point that when, again, we keep on holding up Jimmy Carter, Carter had to put the family peanut farm
Yeah.
into a blind trust, right? Not globe-trotting international deals were coming down to
Right.
the Carter peanut plant in Plains, Georgia, right? But that was the level of hands off that we were expected to have. And Trump made noises about this when he came into office. He had that ridiculous premise where his sons were going to be in charge and he would have nothing to do with it. He had that photo op, one of the many ones where they piled up a bunch of blank paper on a table and pretended it was actually something, right?
Right.
Uh, and they made a big deal about it in the first term, but they slowly pushed the line, right? The Trump International Hotel was clearly awash in foreign money, real estate deals that they were getting in, and Congress didn't push back as it should, right? They really let this stuff slide. There's a lot of habit with this Congress. It used to be Republicans, now some Democrats too, of, oh, well, it's Trump. He's different. No, I'm
Right.
sorry. The rules still apply. And
Right.
so now in his second term, it has gone to ridiculous lengths. He's got this meme coin where they're
Yeah.
making millions of money. All kinds of deals are being dropped at the feet of his kids. Again, the pretense that there's any kind of wall between his official acts and his business acts is insane. I mean, you've got Amazon and making a documentary about Melania Trump to try to sweeten the deal. I mean, it's the kind of petty grifting that
Yeah.
no matter what your politics are, again, a generation ago, this would have been seen as so far beyond the pale that it would have been laughable. Again, they would have assumed they would have ran this guy out of office, and yet every day he sits in there and breaks the clear letter of the Constitution.
Yeah, and you mentioned Congress's inaction, which makes me wonder, Kevin, do you think the founding fathers ever sort of envisioned when they set up this tripartite government with checks and balances, do you think they ever envisioned that Congress would just basically abdicate its responsibility, shrug its shoulders, and give as much power to the executive as possible?
No, no. The genius of the American system of government is that Madison understood human beings are greedy and selfish. And he made the system work on that, right? There's an assumption that people in the executive branch, the legislative branch, the judicial branch are all going to jealously guard their power, that they're not going to want to give anything to the other ones. What
Right.
they couldn't have seen, they wouldn't have imagined. No, I'm sorry. They did imagine Trump. They warned about Trump specifically. What they couldn't have imagined, though, was a Congress that would be so beholden to a president that they would roll over. And this is, again, the people that loved George Washington, wanted to make him a king, still
Right.
thought Congress would stand and jealously guard its own principles. And yet they've now rolled over for, basically a reality TV star with a bad makeup job. I mean, it is amazing. If the founders could come back today, they would never stop spinning. I guess they would be alive then, but they wouldn't be spinning their graves. But I butchered
They'd
that
be spinning.
metaphor. They
Yeah.
would be
Well,
upset is the takeaway. Yeah.
yeah, they'd be spinning in their graves trying to get out, I guess,
Right.
if they
Yes.
were
Yeah.
alive. So you're a professor at one of the lesser oddities. Um,
Yeah.
what's your take on Trump's assault on universities, the responses from those universities, everything that we're seeing almost daily now?
Yeah. My response is, first of all, a stream of invectives and profanity. I think we've seen now clear evidence that there's a model to follow and a model not to. And Columbia has botched this every way imaginable. Um, and I like to joke that I thought my fellow nerds in academia all had experience with bullies and knew that
Right.
the way to deal with a bully isn't to immediately capitulate and say, I'll give you whatever you want, because then the bully just comes back and asks for more. The way you deal with a bully is you stand your ground, and if needed, you punch them in the face, metaphorically, FBI, you punch them in the face, and you get them to stand down. And we've seen that now with the different approaches of the Ivy League institutions, right? Columbia rolled over. Harvard is getting a little blowback now, but Harvard has decided there's no use in rolling over. They're just going to ask for more.
Right.
So the reckoning has come. Now, lesser Ivy or not, we like to think of it as the most Southern Ivy, but Princeton, I think, has done a beautiful job on this. And admittedly, we're in a better position than others because we don't have a med school. We don't have the kind of vulnerabilities that a lot of Ivy League schools have with federal scientific funding. We have other stuff, though, that is bound up there. So we still have some skin in the game. And our president, Chris Eisgruber, has done, I think, a pretty solid job in holding the line and trying to get people to work together. So I think with all of this, not just the universities, but any of these Trump attacks, right? You see it with the law firms. We see it with other things. He tries to pick one person off.
Right.
And I don't have to quote Niemöller to you here, but there is a real strength in collective action, right? People have to stand together. And I think we're seeing the universities start to stand together. The law firms started to stand together. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to realize that whether or not we're currently in the crosshairs, they will eventually come for all of us. So you can't hide from this. All you can do is stand together in solidarity and push back against this. And when they push back, the last thing I'll say, when they push back like a classic bully, they fold, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen this on the greatest instance of standing together, which was Trump's tariff issue. If he tried to do it a country at a time, he might have picked them apart. He went blanket against everybody, and it blew up in his face, right? People can stand together because they had no choice there. And we should all take that as a lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I get Columbia alumni emails all the time, and more so now. And just today, I got a lovely email from the president of Columbia, Claire Shipman, explaining why I think it was 70 plus students were arrested for protesting yesterday. But I'm not a strongly worded letter guy. But like for the first time that I can think of, I actually have started replying to these,
Yeah.
Office of Alumni Relations,
Yep.
just being like, "What the hell are you doing?" Like,
Good.
just it's unreal. And I saw just today in the New York Times a professor of philosophy at West Point, a guy named Dr. Graham Parsons, announced that he is retiring at the end of this semester. He teaches military ethics, and he was basically like, I can't do this anymore under this administration. I mean, things are really getting bad, aren't they?"
Yeah, they are. They are. And I read that. And I felt for the professor. I understand where he's coming from, the constraints. Um, I worry though that a wave of retirements like that, a wave of people saying, I simply can't do this. It's principle. I'm not going to argue with anyone who feels they need to step away.
Sure.
But the result is, if we then get people who are preaching a different line about
Right.
what military ethics are, who are giving the kind of Hegseth version of, you're not loyal to the Constitution, you're loyal to the president, and we're the president's army, that's really dangerous, right? And I hope people know how seriously the officer corps has certainly taken that oath. They understand that as an oath to the Constitution, not as an oath to the president. And that's a vitally important thing here. And God help us all if that ever changes.
God help us indeed. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on. Always a great pleasure to talk to you. And Kevin is an excellent follow over on Blue Sky at Kevin M. Kruse. That's Kruse. Are you .bsky.com, or do you have a custom?
.bsky. You'll find me. I'm there.
Okay. Yeah.
Even
Kevin,
if you don't want to, I'm there. Sorry.
It's true. You're pretty unavoidable.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. Take care. Bye-bye.